Did you print it?
Yes.
I can have, just point.
I think you're still up in front of Peggy.
Get these.
With budget stuff, so I don't see.
Those are the others, right?
Oh, yes, right. Okay, great.
Anybody else need one?
I've got one. Great. Okay, so I think if everybody's good, it's 7:01, so I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Monday, January 22nd. Please all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, no real update from my side, except it'll be interesting. I'm going to actually go on a tour of some affordable housing, different not projects, but projects going on in the region. So our Council of Government organized a bus tour, and so I'm kind of looking forward to that. We have Wellington and Madison, which was groundbreaking in December, which is really our first large affordable housing complex in a long time in town. And so it'd be interesting to see what other communities are doing. So I'm looking forward to that. But otherwise, no real updates. Obviously, we've had some weather events happening. We continue to encourage people to sign up for Madison Alerts to get weather updates, and just be wary of, things can change very quickly. And especially the storms we encountered last week with a lot of the flooding. It's important to stay in tune and understand what's going on in town with road closures and things like that. So just want to encourage people to do that. You can get more information about signing up on the town website. And with that, I'll turn on to other liaison reports or selectmen's comments. I don't know if we had any meetings since our last. It's been a compressed schedule, so
Nope.
no updates on.
I got to attend the Leonardo da Vinci opening at the Scranton Memorial Libraries this weekend, which was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. So if you haven't had a chance to get out there and check it out, it's for the children. But I think adults, etc., myself, I got a little picture inside of Leonardo da Vinci's head. So that was pretty cool. So I would highly suggest checking it out with grandchildren, with children. It's a family event. It was very well done. It's big. It's a lot bigger than I expected. So it's a lot of square feet in the library. So it's pretty impressive. So we're very lucky.
Great. Any other? Nope, not this one. Okay, good. So moving on, do we have any hands raised? Do we have any citizens' comments online? Well, first of all, here in the audience, any residents' comments at all? No? Okay, great, thank you. And then if there's any hands raised online, Jeannie, do you see any?
I do not.
No hands raised. Okay, there's always an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting as well. So, so with that, I guess I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. So item number 7, I would like to welcome up members of the Garden Club who are here tonight. We're here to issue a proclamation to celebrate their 100th anniversary, which is incredible. So we want to welcome you here tonight. And what I'll do, I don't know, do you want to speak a little bit about the club, or do you have any materials you want to talk about, presentations?
I think the proclamation says it all.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if there's a town crier or something.
It's just
So
like,
I will read.
That's fine.
Right, so what I will do is I'm going to make a motion to approve a proclamation for the 100th anniversary of the Garden Club of Madison. I'll get a second and then I'll read the proclamation.
second.
Okay, great, well. Proclamation celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Garden Club of Madison. Whereas for 100 years, the Garden Club of Madison has been a vibrant and committed part of the community fabric. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison has endured through the decades, sharing the art, science, and pleasure of gardening, horticulture, and environmental conservation with the community. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison has enhanced the beauty of our community by developing and maintaining numerous perennial and seaside gardens and native plant walks throughout town. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison maintains the Veterans and 9/11 Memorial Gardens. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison is responsible for the planting of more than 20,000 daffodil bulbs throughout the town and continues to expand the Daffodil Trail initiative each year. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison manages the Bower Park Apple Orchard, its beehives and orchard expansion. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison exemplifies volunteerism and promotes a healthy lifestyle that lasts a lifetime, helps reduce stress from other areas of life, and teaches that rewards can come from diligent efforts. And whereas the board gratefully recognizes the achievements of the Garden Club of Madison, on behalf of the town and the Board of Selectmen, I express our appreciation for the Garden Club of Madison's outstanding commitment to the town on its 100th anniversary. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Madison, do hereby recognize the Garden Club of Madison's 100th anniversary dated at Madison, Connecticut, this 22nd day of January 2024. All in favor of approving the proclamation, say aye. Aye. So, with that, we have unanimous approval of the proclamation, which we will present. And I know that we talked a bit about maybe taking some of the funding that you have to put it for a project that you can kind of put your stamp on more, which I think is a great idea. We're really appreciative of that and the donation that you're going to be supplying. And just excited to see, I forgot about the Daffodil Project. I know I've seen those around town. And certainly the memorial gardens around Memorial Day and the 9/11 Memorial, those are all important central ports for the community. So we just love to keep our town beautiful, and they do a great job doing that. So thank you for that. If you'd like, we can get a picture with the board if you want. And I don't know if any of you would like to, say a few words or don't feel you have to, but you're welcome to do that. So, yeah. All right. So we could just do it in front of here so we cover up all our mess, and then Jeannie said she'd take a photo, take a couple.
A bunch of them we can get on the website. I can do multiple.
Okay.
I'm not worried about it. So come and join us. We'll try to get everybody in here. And we'll all snuggle in. Yeah. And if you want to hold the proclamation.
We have a run.
Let's
make it roll.
Right? Yeah.
Double row it.
So, that's great.
I think I took enough.
All right.
See, now you're all speechless.
Congratulations.
Announce.
Oh my God.
It's amazing. Project. I'm sorry this didn't work out the way we thought, but I'm excited about the next phase, so, okay?
You want one with just Peggy and the two of you?
See that? You have enough? Same shirt. Okay.
That's why I make sure we get shoes.
I didn't get the memo.
Okay, great. And I will email those to you, and then we get pictures, and we'll do a little town blast on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all your work.
Thanks, everybody.
We're the founding members here.
Okay.
That's gonna be something we're gonna have time. Yeah. They have a great sale every year. I know.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, So, all right, so the next item on our agenda is an update from the Planning and Zoning Commission on our plan of conservation. So we have our chair here, Carol Snow, and she was just going to walk through a little presentation on, the POCD and the process that they're at right now. So,
Okay, great, thanks. I have a PowerPoint to share.
Yeah, it's not letting me share. I don't know if that's because you took over.
I don't think
Oh,
so.
now it's on.
Okay. And I promise it's really quick, even though it's a lot of slides.
This is important stuff.
Okay, so last time I was here to give you an update, I believe was in March 2023, and a lot has happened since then. First of all, we are now a full commission of 9 members, so thank you very much for that. It's really exciting. We've got a great team, and so they've jumped into this plan of conservation and development full-heartedly. And in fact, I think it's great that they've taken ownership of it as opposed to having us just outsource it to a consultant, which we do have a consultant and who will sort of put on all the finishing touches and really make sure we've checked all the boxes that we need for state requirements and regional requirements. At any rate, we've made a lot of progress, and obviously a big impact to us was the strategic plan. And so we kind of put some of our movement forward on hold while we heard back from the community and back from you all to see how that took shape, and that was great. And I think what we're coming up with is nicely aligned and complements well, and also reinforces the strategic plan. So we look forward to hearing back from you all on that when you have a chance to see a draft. So what we I think last time I talked to you, we had already decided what our basic themes were, and that we had split into dividing it into the built environment and the natural environment. And we were just, I think, getting started on the natural environment. Now we've done both. And what became immediately obvious going through this whole process was how interrelated and interconnected they are. So this is actually, the PowerPoint I'm giving was basically put together by Bob Reinhardt, who's gotten very interested in helping combine all these different kind of policies and action items into a matrix using his business skills, which is fantastic to have that kind of skill set on the commission, in a way that we've kind of distilled it down to 7 policies and action items. So we've gone from the previous plan of conservation and development had over 100 action items. We've gone down to 7 policies and just over 30 action items, which will be adjusted, obviously, when we get more feedback from stakeholders. But let's just, if we could just run through this quickly, Jean, I guess do I just ask you? Yeah, so here's what we've done so far. You can see we're coming down to the home stretch of the conclusion and implementation guidelines. Okay, next slide. And I don't know if you can read that, but we've gone, I'm giving you sort of an introduction, then we went through a community vision plan for the natural environment, the built environment, and then conclusion implementations. We've discussed a lot about vision, goals, themes and perspectives and policies. And the vision and goals, I think, was actually a really good exercise for us to be involved in some of the strategic planning to see how you define those and set parameters and what's important and how you prioritize. Okay, next. So here's just some of the terminology. We got to be more comfortable with vision, goals, themes, policies, influenced by our perspectives, which are the natural and built environment, and then action items. Okay, next. So I don't know if we want to read through all this, but we wanted to really have impactful statements about what our vision was. And, we were kind of starting out all over the map in a way and kind of collecting all these different ideas. And again, I think it helped us crystallize our thoughts by going through the strategic planning process to create a vision for the plan of conservation and development that we think works appropriately. And we're really excited about it, and what works for Madison, obviously. So, and then again, the goals, we decided to take it down to Madison as a community that exhibits high vitality and connects people. So these are based on our themes too. Works at sustaining a high quality of life for all and is resilient in the face of current and future challenges, and is growing responsibly and offers all residents the opportunity to participate in that growth. So pretty broad, but I think they work well within the context of the plan of conservation and development. So going back to our themes and perspectives, we had these paired themes that we worked out, I think before the last time I came to you. So by March, we already had these of vitality and connectivity, resilience and sustainability, opportunity and growth, and we applied those to the 2 perspectives, which are the natural environment and the built environment. Next, Jean. So this is where we started heading with those 2 environments, a list of policies, and that's when we started to see all the overlap. So then next slide, we mapped out where the similarities and differences were and what we thought we needed to do going forward, what direction we should take. And we decided we didn't want to maintain these two separate environments. We wanted to combine them. Next slide. So this is what it starts to look like. And this is where it's great to have these different matrix capabilities. We used Trello and I think something called House of Quality. So again, with new commissioners on board, we have new talent and new skills. And, I come from the nonprofit world, so this is all sort of new to me. It's great. And this is where we're heading then. And we'll run through these policies. I think, did you all get hard copies, or at least you were sent copies?
Today,
Yeah,
so.
so you can take your time looking through them, and we will be obviously reaching out to you in a formal way when we have to go through the whole process, the 65-day process of, getting the stakeholders buy-in, getting your buy-in, and getting approval. But just so you know where we're headed, this is what it starts to look like. Next slide. And these are our policies. Should I go ahead and read that, or can anybody?
I think that's what the board wants to accomplish tonight. I think the board, obviously, we're gonna be coming back with some specific thoughts. I
Absolutely.
think,
Yeah.
this is more.
So these are the 7
Structure,
policies we've come up with that combine, and you can see that some are more specifically for the built environment, some are more specifically for the natural environment, but there is overlap. I'm also happy to share this kind of information presentation with anybody else who's interested. And then took it to the next step, which was to talk about the actions that we've identified, and this is based also mostly on feedback we had from all the different stakeholders. So the next slide. Oh, sorry, this is what we did. Actually, Bob Reinhardt did this, you could read it. A little larger font, but going through the different policies. So there's 3 out of 7.
Yeah.
And then the next slide is the remaining 4 out of 7.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. We realized, actually, we had to pitch this to our own commission first to make sure that everyone was comfortable putting all these different action items together in a different way. And that's why we did it this way. So here it is where, again, you can, I just want you to see what the policies are looking like and the action items underneath them. Some have more, some have subcategories within the action items. We realized that we had very kind of inconsistent plans and implementation action items. So we kind of broke them down appropriately, we thought, so that some are very quick and easy, kind of low hanging fruit. Others are big picture. And we didn't want to lose any of those, even though they were inconsistent. So we've combined them in these kind of outline forms that I think will work well.
Well, I'm seeing similarities with some of the implementation plan pieces that we have in the strategic.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I don't think I've seen your implementation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of still a work in progress. I mean,
Yeah.
there's kind of like headliners and stuff, but we'll be digging to this level in certain areas.
Yeah.
So it's like pet study, obviously,
Yep.
these are things that have been in motion.
Some
But
of
it's gonna be-
these are very much underway.
And so it'll be nice to have them all listed and align with the, with the POCD as well, so.
The other thing I think we did at our last meeting was I tried a draft with no numbers or letters because I didn't want to imply that there was prioritization. I got shot down. We need numbers, we need letters. You need to be able to refer to policy 1C and not have to explain it all the time. So I want to say again then that these are not prioritized necessarily, that, we sort of see them as having equal weight and balance.
So these aren't things necessarily that the commission would be doing. They're
No,
things
that's
they
when
want
the
town
implementation
to
gets
do. Yeah.
into the details of who's responsible for what. And so we'll work with you all on, comparing how your implementation for the strategic plan works and how ours does.
Yeah.
And also depending on town staff, because we're relying heavily, I think, on town staff. Don't want to overwhelm them, but we want to be able to accomplish these actions in the next 10 years or so. And actually, let me take a deep breath and just say also, this is a living document. And we do hope that it will be updated and changed and modified as needed. I mean, one of the things we've been talking about is the storms, recent storms, and, models are so outdated. And so how do we try to project, what the world is going to look like in 10 years? So. Anyway, we could just flip through. I think there's 7 slides for the different policies. Yeah. So you can see that, some have a lot of information and a lot of action items. Some were I think 4 or 5 only. Here's I'm sorry, June, could you just back up once? The housing, section, again, we're working with the Affordable Housing Group closely and want to make sure that we're supporting and reinforcing their plan and then expanding it a little bit more broadly. Okay, thanks, Jean. So next steps. So we have to complete drafting all the action items for each policy, incorporate the action items into implementation chart, incorporate mapping. We don't have our maps yet in our rough draft or our working draft of the plan of conservation and development. Also, one thing we're going to have to do is update it to 2024, not 2023, because we are here in 2024. Hold public meetings for discussion of the draft, finalize policies and actions, mandatory referrals and postings of draft according to state statutes, and then hold public hearing and adopt the plan. So coming down the home stretch. And that's it. That's my presentation. Again, I want to thank Bob Reinhardt for putting most of that together, and Aaron Maddox and I worked on it for a little further.
Carol, is that available on the planning and zoning's page on the town website so that folks,
This PowerPoint?
yeah,
Not yet, but we'd be happy to share it.
I think
Yeah,
folks in town would probably like the opportunity to take a look, just so that they have a better understanding of all of the pieces that you guys have been working on.
absolutely, yeah.
It's a lot of work.
And in fact, I think last time I looked at our website, the draft of the POCD that was up there was back from July, and it was really crude and barely there. And so we have a November, December draft that we're feeling pretty comfortable with. We need to get that on as
Yeah.
link as well.
Yeah, if both that draft and this PowerPoint could get loaded up on there.
Yep.
That would be helpful for the public.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
so
Yeah.
you have a, similar to we did with the strategic plan, an opportunity that's more of not a formal public hearing, but a information session so people could come and like give.
Yeah,
their
I think that's a great
comments.
idea, Peggy. You know, we've
Yeah.
sort of been feeling that because our meetings are public meetings and we've been invested in it so that the first meeting of every month for planning and zoning has been the planning and the POCD primarily. So we've had people coming to that, but I think when we get it into a pretty final state, it would be great to have a more public forum to get feedback. Obviously, we don't want to completely restructure it at that point, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Carol, for context, so this is every 10 years. We do this, that's correct?
It's required every 10 years.
Every 10 years.
But there's a little leniency, obviously,
Of
you know,
course.
if you go a few months late, it's okay.
So I'm curious, just even what you just presented and maybe the draft that's will be up on the town website.
Yep.
How much is new? How much is reuse? I mean, is it, do we
So-
leverage 50% of it? We start from a draft? Do we?
Yeah,
is it
we
clean
did.
sheet? Is it?
We did review the previous 2013 to 2023
Yeah.
POCD. I think I spoke about that in March because there were so many implementation actions that never got done. So we went through those and kind of filtered to see what did we want to continue and carry on. But we're really approaching it with a fresh start in many ways. And, based also on what the state plan looks like and what the SCROG, Regional Plan of Conservation and Development, which is actually where we took the natural environment and built environment. They also had the human environment, which was kind of an interesting concept, but we felt that human environment kind of applies to everything. So we didn't need to say that separately. And even now, as I've said, we've combined them into two. And actually, in the process of doing this, I think, Bruce, at the last meeting, you asked, or last time I gave a presentation, you said, what kind of surprised you? One thing that's really surprised me about Madison is that it's almost 50-50 built in natural environment. It's like 46-44. And, and so I felt like that, just knowing that sort of physical evidence about the town helped guide how we approached and moved forward and how we're responding to the needs of the town.
You talked about how you expected this to be a living document.
Yeah.
And is that living after it's adopted?
Yep.
So it is subject to change. And so as the strategic plan grows and changes, this document can grow and change.
Absolutely.
And vice versa, because there's really a very circular conversation, right? One informs the other. They both inform each other.
And we want them to be collaborative in a way. Yeah. I will say that I don't think the 2013 to 2023 Plan of Conservation and Development was ever changed. So, we say we want it to be a living document, then it's up to us to make it a living document.
Well, and I think I make that comment because over the years, we would hear somebody be surprised that the
Mhm.
town was going in a direction, and the response was, it's in the POCD.
Right.
And it was almost like it's in stone. We said we were gonna do it,
No pun
and that's it. And so the argument was back in 2013.
The other thing though, Bruce, was that to me, the previous one, you could almost find whatever you wanted to in it, and that's, maybe a successful POCD because it covers everything. But I found it difficult to work with because, just
But I think that honest challenge to an initiative of why are we doing this shouldn't be met with it's in the POCD, right?
exactly.
There should be a thoughtful response back, not just a can.
And it relates to our values and,
Yeah.
who we are as a
Which change and
town.
evolve
And,
and-
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
depending on the times. I mean, 10 years is a long time.
It's a
Let's
long
be,
time.
right, transparent about that. It's a long time. And I think, things in our town are going to change and evolve. And
In ways that we
I'm
can't
actually
even.
kind of surprised that nothing had changed in 10 years. So,
Well, the other feedback I had heard is that on the last POCD, there was no person or I shouldn't say person, the previous ones had had a committee
Yes.
to ensure that it was being followed, that it was being updated. And this last one, for some reason, they never did that.
They just dropped it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and also Peggy, I think that, Dave Anderson had just come on board as the town planner when the last one was
Mhm.
approved. And so I think a lot of it sort of fell on him to coordinate all that. Now, now we've learned that, is that a
Yeah.
good idea?
I mean, it is, and
Or
have
who
you
is-
thought about that, like, piece of, like, what we're going to be doing is talking about that internally a little bit more about how to make sure that the strategic plan doesn't just sit on
it's
itself,
living.
right?
Yeah.
We have an implementation plan that we've started, but, some of the recommendations from the consultant was you need to have like champions for things, people
Yeah.
that their job they're responsible for, and they have to make sure these things get done, and then the board is gonna hold those people accountable for that. So maybe that's a conversation we have, because it's hard for you as a volunteer board to dictate, right?
Or,
how the
yeah, I mean,
town
we're
is gonna
also-
implement,
We're
right?
also delegating to other commissions and committees
Right.
and identifying who all would be involved. And one thing
Right.
that we noticed in the previous one is that if you have too many people involved, it never gets done.
Mhm.
Because everybody sort of assumes someone else is gonna take care of it, and it doesn't happen. And especially when there was no oversight, no sort of ombudsman
Mhm.
making sure that these policies were actually being put into action.
And I think the town's affordable housing plan actually has a good example of how different pieces of that plan are tasked to different entities within town. So, just helps to keep
It will be something like that,
pieces more
yeah.
manageable.
And we have the same consultant who is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a small
Keep it in
planning
family,
world when you
yeah.
get down to
Well,
it.
And maybe that's part of when we have a more collaborative, discussion with you about our thoughts, we talk about that and come up with something that makes sense that the town, whether it's staff, a volunteer committee or something where we have a good plan in place, right?
Right,
To make sure it doesn't.
right. And I think it also help identify if additional staff are needed, if we need to
Right.
restructure commissions and committees and,
Right.
be interesting.
I found some real gems in here. The core document is wonderful. I found some real gems in here that impressed me. One was calling for helping the students in our schools understand and appreciate some of the natural environments and systems that are going on. I think a second one was a call for helping to educate private landowners about stewardship and appropriate activities to take place or should not take place on private land. And the third one was a call to work more closely with the Madison Land Trust.
Yeah, and we've had, I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about all of these. We've asked ourselves, it's not our position to tell the Board of Education or the schools how to teach kids, but outside of that environment, how can we support and back up? And I mean, you just mentioned the Leonardo show at the library. That's an amazing thing. And if we can have more awareness also, just education and awareness, reaching out to the community and get more community involvement, I think, too. So, yeah, thank you. Great.
Amazing.
So the other thing, maybe do you want to just spend a minute about the meeting that you're planning in February with the affordable
The housing meeting,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're gonna be getting together and giving a public presentation. Thank you, Peggy, for helping us organize it. I think just to focus on the issues with housing in the town, because they are big issues. And, the feedback from the strategic planning workshops and everything, so much of it was about housing for everybody, including seniors and young families, and, not just being afraid of the uppercase A, uppercase H affordable housing, which I like to describe it that way, but just looking at, what is needed in the town, and who, the way we're phrasing it is that we just want to do whatever we can so everyone can live here who wants to live here.
So we got together with the Affordable Housing Committee Chair, and there's going to be kind of a facilitated meeting. And Jen participated in that discussion as well. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity to start that conversation in the community about what are our housing needs. Because so much of it is kind of focused on a specific development or this affordable issue or 830G or whatever, So let's talk more broadly and let people come forward and talk about the different housing needs, because it's all over the spectrum. And we talk about, as you said, housing for all, trying to figure out how do we accommodate all the different needs.
And new ideas, and, look at what other communities are doing to address the
And how
housing
does-
shortages,
The affordable housing, how does that intersect too with preserving our open spaces, preserving our historic structures? Because there is a lot of conversation that's gone on about that through the consultants that are working with Scrog. So I think that's definitely an important piece of the puzzle to incorporate for, the general public, is that it's not an all or nothing. There is a way to marry the two together for positive outcomes.
And you're right, there will be a facilitator from Scrog.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's a father-son duo.
Yeah.
Who will be helping us and guiding us.
Yeah.
And
So
bringing.
it'll be I think we're firming up the date, and it'll be in February, and we'll get, promote that to the public, and it can be in person. We'll also have people be able to attend online.
But I'm
And it's like a first step to really
Yeah.
kind of have that conversation start.
But I'm curious, even in that conversation, leading up to it, how much do we lean on the experience of other shoreline towns or other towns that are the same as ours? I mean, at the end of the day, this is not a unique problem just to Madison.
No, it's across the country, it's
Of course.
global even, I
Right.
would say. I think that's, we do work with other communities. I'm the rep for the planning group for Scrog. And I find actually that Madison's kind of an outlier in that section of Connecticut, where there are a lot of more urban areas and more rural areas. And then we're the shoreline town farthest east. So we're also working, I think, with Old Saybrook, and, all the shoreline communities have more in common in a way than the South Central Connecticut region that has been defined by the state, I guess. Yeah.
And our Affordable Housing Committee members have been very active in reaching out to other towns, other parts of the country,
Yeah.
even to
Yeah.
find out, having talks with developers and town leaders and that sort of thing, to see what other folks are doing and are there opportunities that would fit for Madison, as opposed to what fits for everybody else, but what are people doing that would fit here?
And even, I'm reading articles about what's happening in New York City, because, there was recently an opinion piece published about using historic properties and taking, basically leveling them so you could build more housing. And, there's a big reaction in today's paper in the letters including Sarah Bronin, who's been so instrumental in
Oh,
desegregate
in the New York
Connecticut,
Times today?
saying, you don't have, it's not an either or, you can, you have other buildings to look to or other places to look to build versus tearing down historic properties to accommodate housing needs. And, on a small scale, we're there.
And mixed use properties too. where you've
Adaptive
got,
reuse,
you
just
know,
looking at things
commercial on the
differently.
ground floor, residential above.
Well, and I think one of the things as part of this is an educational component, because a lot of people don't understand that some of our zoning restricts things like that, right?
Right.
So it's trying to educate, like, well, our zoning actually won't allow us to do that. That's why we might need
Our
to
zoning is very
get
restrictive,
out.
yeah.
So we need to like look at those reforms possibly if we want to encourage this type of housing or changes to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So at the risk of saying we're drifting off
yeah,
of the
we are,
agenda.
yeah. I know, we
Well
got some
done,
other
Bruce,
guests
well
here,
done.
so, but thank you very much for that, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, great.
Just so I understand though, timeline wise, real quick, when do you think, like, the board would be giving more formal feedback on the P O C D?
We're hoping within a month or so, we'll be
Okay.
in a much better place.
Okay,
Maybe I'm speaking too optimistically, but.
in the
um,
next 2 months, like February, March?
Yeah, I mean, we want
Okay.
to wrap this up by April, May, if we
Okay.
can.
Okay.
We're counting down
Right.
days at this point.
Okay.
We feel your
The
pain.
clock
We went
is
through the
ticking.
strategic plan, so.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate
Yeah,
it. So, so we'll go move on to our next item. I wanted to give an update on our food scrap recycling program that was started in last May, which we have two of our consultants who are advising us on this. So Kristen Brown and Pam Roast have been working hard on Madison. They've been basically running the program for us. And so I thought it'd be good to give just kind of overview of the program and where we are right now and why we're doing this. And then we want to talk a little bit about where we go from here because, and we actually have somebody here from Deep too, Ethan Van Ness, who is working on these types of programs. So, so this was something that, if you talk about at our COG meetings, we've had, I can't tell you how many presentations about the waste crisis in the state of Connecticut right now. People just don't get it, and but no one else knows about it. Like, it is becoming a huge problem, and they'll walk through about, and yet, we're trying to figure out how are we going to make it better. This is like a tiny sliver of that. It's like a first baby step to try to help address that. And so this pilot program through funding through DEEP enables us to kind of test some ways to address the waste crisis. But there's going to have to be a lot more follow through. And being a town that we don't have municipal trash service, we really have no control over what residents do with their waste. Because we don't even really regulate the people that provide collection in our town either. So it's all private hauler. And so, this was a voluntary program. It's very complicated to do. And also to Al, have seen to make sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to do. So this was kind of a little mini way to realize all the challenges the town would have to do any kind of regulation or way to address the waste crisis. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Kristen. I guess you're going to do the presentation.
Yeah.
And I know your glass. You don't have your glasses.
I'm borrowing pants.
I guess so.
That's good. I can't see anything, but now it's fine. So my name is Kristen Brown, and I'm the consultant for DEP, and I'm working on projects for 15 other municipalities in Connecticut. I've been in garbage for 35 years, so specifically focused on residential waste reduction strategies in the US and also in Europe. So this has been a really fun project because there are 15 cities and towns doing it. I also have Pam and Ethan, as you mentioned, here with me today. So if you have questions for anyone, but I'm going to just go through, it'll take about 10 minutes just to give you a high level overview of where we are, what's happening, and what we think next steps should be. So next slide. These are some of your other towns that are also in the process of this pilot process. You all did start in May, so you're coming up for the end of your pilot will be May. So next slide. So click this just a couple of times and it'll show you a few different things. There is a waste crisis, not just in Connecticut, maybe one more, I think does it. One more. Okay, so it's not just Connecticut. So again, I've been doing this for 35 years. It's everywhere. We knew this when I was working back in Europe, right out of college. They had a waste crisis. We were having it too. We just ignored it. In the United States, they did something about it. We had 6,000 landfills when I started doing this back in the 1980s, late 80s. Today we have just over 1,000 landfills remaining in the United States. So that's a really big deal. That's a huge number, and it's something that no one really realizes. We had about 85 incinerators, and now we're down to about 75 incinerators that also help to, incinerate, burn the trash for energy. In Connecticut, you had 6, now you're down to 4. The big one just closed, Mira in Hartford. So it's not just Connecticut that's facing this crisis, it really is the entire country. But because New England is heavily populated with a small land area, you have fewer landfills remaining. So this chart looks at, the gray line is New York and the blue line is Connecticut. So you can see landfill capacity by 2040 is going to be almost nothing in New England, and New York even less. So what happens is we ship our waste out of state, anything that we can't take care of within the state. Next slide. The other thing that's kind of happening is the other states don't really want our trash. You can't necessarily blame them. So New Hampshire is the first one. They've introduced 2 bills this session. They currently take a lot of the trash from Massachusetts. They're trying to stop that from happening. Pennsylvania and Ohio, West Virginia, South Carolina take Connecticut's trash, primarily Pennsylvania and Ohio. But again, at any point, if a state doesn't want our trash, we can't necessarily, where is it going to go? So it really is not just a crisis in the state, but it is a crisis everywhere. And we don't necessarily see that changing. What they do in Europe that they do differently is they don't consider the trash, they consider it materials, and they manage their materials differently. So these pilots have been designed to help everyone think differently about their trash, and focus on 2 key programs. So next slide. And the programs are unit-based pricing and food scrap collection. And when you look at the waste stream in general, you can see that most of what we throw away, in fact, EPA will tell you 75% of what we actually throw in our trash can could be diverted someplace else, whether it's bringing your hangers back to the dry cleaner, whether it's, recycling your textiles, clothes, even if you only have 1 shoe. If you I always wondered with my kids why there was only 1 and what they did with the other one, but you can actually bring those shoes to Goodwill. Socks, they turn the shoes, yes, socks, I never have 2. But they actually turn the shoes into basketball courts and underlayment for different types of tiles or wood. So there's something that can be done with anything if you have a good steady stream of feedstock and if you have a good system for collecting it. And that's what they have in Europe, and we have less of that in the United States. So that's what we really have to build on, is figuring out this new infrastructure. Next slide. When you look at the waste stream, something that you talked about here with resilience and climate change, food scraps contribute to a little over 20% of the waste stream itself, what we're throwing out, but 58% of the emissions. So if we could take those food scraps out of the waste stream and move them into a stream where you can capture those emissions and turn that into energy, that's a significant change in what our waste contributes to climate change. So,
And that's by weight, right?
And
20% of the waste.
right,
stream
by weight, and then, yeah. So it is really important to think differently about our food scraps, and that's one of the primary aspects of the pilot that you've been doing. Next slide. So I consider Madison and Guilford together because you started at the same time, you're neighbors, and you kind of intermingle, and you also share the transfer
You
station.
used to
So
be part of Guilford.
okay, so you've got a lot in common.
You understand, you hate Guilford.
But when you look at how you dispose of your trash, as Peggy mentioned, you have the transfer station, but you also have many of the homes just hire a hauler. But there's still an expense to that. So you're spending about $6.9 million throwing away trash. And together, so between the 2 of you, about 6.9. But if you added in a separate food route collection for food scraps, which there are companies that can pick up your food scraps, you're getting up to over $11 million a year spending on trash. So even though you're not handling that for residents. Your residents are still paying for it. So how can we think differently about this whole system to hopefully either save money or at least mitigate risk or mitigate long-term costs? How can we create a system that works better? So next slide. Next. So what you're trying out here is something called UBP, unit-based pricing, and it is a way of thinking about your trash differently. So in the pilot homes, they're not actually paying for their special trash bags or their food scrap bags, but they were given a certain number and they were asked to try to work within their allotment. So to think differently about everything that they throw away. They were given 2 orange 13-gallon trash bags a week and 1 green 8-gallon food scrap bag. And the idea was no matter how big your family was, try to fit into those 2 bags of waste and 1 bag for food scraps. And most people from all the audits we've done have done a great job with that. So it's something that's entirely possible to do. I had a babysitter with my kid when my kids were little, and I wondered why she was so great at organizing the trash, because I would come back and there was no waste. And I was kind of a nut about trash because I've been in this industry. And she goes, oh, my family has something called unit-based pricing. We lived in Vermont and we had 12 in our family and my mom would only let me use 1 bag a week. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And this is the key to behavior change, because just like electricity or water or anything else that you pay for, if you're sort of allotting yourself a certain amount or paying by the unit, you're thinking differently about everything that you throw away, and you're realizing all that can come out of the system. So in 1990, when I started this, the average per capita in the United States was about 900 pounds of disposal a year. Right now, we're in the 720 pounds per capita range. Next slide. And we've had all of those things that you saw listed over there, but we've added the bottle bill. We have curbside recycling. We have so many opportunities to recycle, but we're still at only 740 pounds. Well, the one community here in Connecticut that has unit-based pricing, Stonington, they throw away only 386 pounds per capita. So thinking differently about the way you pay for your trash is what creates this change. We see this in the Northeast. There are about 550 communities that have unit-based pricing. So it could be a hauler, it could be the town itself. And the way that it works is you pay a fee, like in a hauler situation, you would pay a cost for the hauling service. That means you hire a hauler, he comes by your house, but you pay for the amount that you actually put out. So if your neighbor is filling up their cart, they're paying more than you're paying if you're not filling up your cart. And that really, what that does is it makes everybody throw away less and think differently about their trash. So next one. When you add the ability to collect curbside food scraps, you get down to about 225 pounds per capita. So when you think about our waste crisis and the fact that we ship so much waste out of state, this really does change the dynamic. If we can change the way that we think about our trash, I guess the best way to think about it is you come home from the grocery store with all of your groceries and you have cans of soup and you have boxes of cereal and you have different items. When you put it away in your cupboard, you just don't empty the bag and throw it all in one place. You put the cans with the cans, the cereal with the cereal, you organize it. So it's just really, when you unpackage it, you just organize it when you throw it away. And if food goes in one place, recycling goes in another. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't. A lot of people just throw it all in the trash. Next slide. This is very prevalent. Again, 550 communities throughout New England, also a lot of communities in New York. When you see this, you see at least a 50% waste reduction every time a community implements a program that has these parameters. Next slide. Hit this a couple of times, I think. These are just a few towns that I've actually worked with in the past. And I think what's great about it is if you create a program that has this type of pricing system, you get a change the week you start it. You can see it comes down immediately. It also stays down. So once you start the program, it doesn't, waste does not change. Once people think about it and they're paying per unit, the waste does not go up. This one is a fun one. This is Sanford, Maine. They actually implemented a unit-based pricing program. Trash went down. A few months later, someone won the lottery that lived in Sanford, Maine and didn't like the concept. So they put up billboard signs and council decided to take it out. Again, this was a town program, so it was different than yours. But you can see trash went back up. And then
he moved away apparently, and they decided to bring it back. So they talk about it all the time. They'll do presentations for you. So it's an interesting, trash is very personal to people. It's very difficult to change, trash, but trash is a big, contributor to climate change. So it is really important for resiliency in the future. Next slide. Oh, one more. Okay, so sort of next steps here. What you have in your current system is you've got the subscription haulers. We've kind of done a survey of pricing. It's somewhere between $440 to $480 a year. If you added on a food scrap collection to get that food scrap out, you'd be adding a separate route, and you also have, would have to pay more money, an additional $360,000. So the system currently, there are some cons to your system, not just the cost, but you have a lot of vehicles on the road. So some of you live on dead ends, you might have two different haulers, and then the recycling truck comes, and now you would have a Blue Earth truck come. So you've got a lot of movement on the streets, so road traffic. And you don't really, as these costs go up, your haulers are just going to raise their price because you don't have a lot of say when you're a resident just contracting with the hauler. And I don't know if you noticed, but on your waste bill, especially from haulers, you'll get those surcharges for fuel, surcharges for COVID, surcharges for this and that. So you don't have a lot of control of the cost. You don't, one of the West Hartford is one of the other towns that's looking at moving this forward, cities. And their thing is, well, it just goes away, except away is somebody else's house, somebody else's home. And here the hauler comes, they pick up your trash, and then it goes away, but it goes, to somebody else's neighborhood far away. And so, thinking differently about social accountability and also keeping these materials inside of the state. So the more food scraps that we can capture inside of the state, the more likely we are to give feedstock to programs that could provide local compost for your garden club that was just here earlier, or for an anaerobic digester that can create biogas within the state instead of shipping it elsewhere. You're creating that sort of circular economy. And also the other con is, just from what we've learned, one of the learnings from the pilot, and you may have known that before, sometimes the haulers are a little bit difficult to work with. The pros to your current system are your customers can choose your residents can choose whatever they want, whoever they want. And it also doesn't take any time from your town administration. So there are pros to what you currently do, but also some cons. So next slide. So some of our next steps are, as we're looking at how do we design a system that could be an optional system for residents. It could be a better choice for residents. It could be, we could design something within the current hauler system that you have. But one of the key aspects is the idea of co-collecting it. So the extra collection route is quite expensive. An extra collection route for food scraps for restaurants or larger institutions makes a lot of sense. But stopping at each individual home, especially if they're spread out, it's very expensive. So what we did in your pilot, and this is actually your trash, in the pictures, yeah, there seems to be a pineapple there or something, I'm not sure, but the residents put trash in the orange, didn't always do it perfect, food in the green, and then it was smushed together in the truck, brought to Wallingford. It goes out on the floor, and then it comes across a conveyor belt where people pull the green bags out so the food waste can be digested. And then the orange bags go on for disposal. So this is actually your trash, but that's what you're looking at there. And next slide. And what we know, these are a couple of the data points. I can tell you that you have an audit going on Thursday. Where we'll be weighing and auditing your trash again, but you seem to be capturing a lot of the available food scraps. So could be up to 70% of that available food scraps from those homes. So that's a really good sign. And to put that into perspective, as we've been trying to recycle for the past 30 or 40 years, we're capturing about 8% of our plastic, about 14% of our textiles, 25% of glass. So you're already capturing 73% of your food the last time that we looked at that. So we feel really good about, as a program, we think it can work. It's just a matter of figuring out how do we make this cost effective for residents, and how do we make it something that can work for within the parameters of what is happening in Madison and Guilford. So next slide. I think think I'm just gonna, yeah, so really the next steps that we have are, we want to finish this pilot going through till May. There is some potential bridge funding available from DEP if you want to take some additional steps. So we'd like to take the time between now and May to work with, you have a current transfer station advisory committee. So sort of our ask, our request is to task them with looking at how can we review a system to see if there's any next steps you want to take, any bridge funding that you might want to apply for, while you still have the time to do that. So our, really, I guess our big ask here is we'd love to work with your committee and review some different pathways forward. For both towns, Madison, Guilford, we have had a webinar with a couple of towns, Southold, New York, Middletown, Rhode Island, that both have private subscription hall and do a program like what we're talking about and have seen that 50% waste reduction. So we want to see if it's something that could fit for the town here. That's it.
Great.
Questions?
I wanted to ask you how you measure success with this pilot. How do you know if the pilot is successful?
Well, it's difficult because we just picked X number of homes to do it. So for the main thing I think is the food scrap capture rate and the cleanliness of the food scraps. So with the 15 communities that we've worked with, it's ranged from, some of our contamination has been in the 30% range, where yours is less than 1%, which means that people understand what they're supposed to put in the bag. Some of what we find in the 30% range is people understand they should put food in there, but they don't understand that they should take the coleslaw out of the package. They just throw the whole thing in, the jelly jar, so it's a learning process. But with the way that we rolled this out, we have great participation from the homes that are doing it, and they're doing a good job with what they are putting in the bag.
How do you evaluate hauler compliance with this pilot?
So that part is difficult. Right now, we just have one hauler doing it, so that part's easy. Part of the task, if we move something forward, is designing a system that where we can audit what's happening to make sure that they're following the rules. Or maybe it's that you create one hauler system for both towns or one town. There's all different pathways forward. It's kind of a matter of what you're most comfortable with.
Are you seeing pressure starting to be put on some of these private haulers? In terms of changing their
Say
systems?
yes. Yes, I would
I
say.
gotta think there's sort of a foreshadow here,
Mhm.
that might be to come.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen a lot of change. Mhm.
I mean, I think the big challenge is, is what is the state gonna do for regulatory? Because
Right.
we don't have any real regulatory ability to require them to do this, and this is for them, it's a challenge, right? Because they had to do a separate route to do this co-collection program for us, and then the food scraps go to a totally different location, right, than where normally they take the trash. So that's also another added element to their routes. There's expense associated with it. So, that's all gonna have to be figured out. But I think, there's a view, I will just say, we've been doing the program. And you've been doing it as well?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and I'm amazed how heavy that bag is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of scraps, it's
Is that food
unbelievable,
scraps?
like,
Yeah, I love jamming that.
and we had a whole
It's
compost.
like satisfying.
Well, you actually clean your refrigerator.
And when you're-
You go through and you're like, oh, I gotta get rid of this stuff because it's so
And your
bad.
kitchen can doesn't get
Yeah.
smelly
Yeah.
because, you don't have any of
Yeah.
that meat waste or anything in there.
And we always had like a compost for just, greens and stuff like that, and that we would kind of use on and off, but this could take everything, all food scraps. And we have a dog too, so we have a dog, we have kids. But we've managed to work within most weeks, the 2 orange trash bags with, family of 4 with kids and a dog, and then that food scrap bag had like, we had ribs last night, right? So
Yeah.
this is like a heavy, but you realize that's pulling it all out of the system.
Yeah.
And so those tipping fees, which is what you end up paying in your trash bill, you're paying for the weight of the trash to get disposed of, right?
Mhm.
So that raises the cost for everybody.
Right.
Having all that weight into your trash. So I think it's important we continue the conversation. And then I did get an opportunity to visit the plant
Oh,
up
right.
in Southington where I went there right in December. And I got to see how it was totally disgusting, but how the bag gets emptied into this slurry thing and it ends up getting converted into energy. And there's multiple buildings in Southington that are powered by the energy that's created. And these little mini plants aren't that expensive to build either. Like, but the problem is you have to drive all the way up to Southington to get it there. So I know there's a lot of discussion, the state should start maybe helping develop these in a geographically better location.
Yeah.
So it takes the cost out of the recycling program.
Yeah, and then we see the trash disposal fees go up in our school budget and our town
Yeah.
budget and everything, which is a question then that I have. Do they have programs like this for schools and hospitals and, other
Yeah,
institutions?
yeah, I think the hard part right now is it is a bit of a chicken and an egg. And like Peggy just referred to it, there's one plant in Southington, we need more infrastructure, but you gotta start someplace. So if everyone keeps waiting till someone else does it, then we're gonna be waiting forever. So I think right now we have 15 towns that have tried something, so we wanna move them to whatever those next steps can be to help create the feedstock that creates a demand that, wants to put a location that's closer, which then lowers the cost for everybody. So if that makes sense. We're in that beginning stage of everything, but I do encourage you to try to take next steps. I'm not sure what those are gonna be, but we'll work with the committee and see what they think. And I think you don't want to give up. I think you want to keep the conversation moving,
So,
At the end of the pilot, what kind of policy recommendation or direction will we be receiving from you?
So I think that's why we want to work with this group. It could be that there are a few options on the table. You could take control of the whole thing and do something town-wide or together as two towns. You could create a program with parameters that the haulers follow, and they do that in Southold, New York. They have independent haulers. They have to use a special bag for disposal. They can charge their own price for the collection. So there's a little variability and people can pick the hauler they want, but they're paying as they go for what they throw away, which then drops the trash in half. And then there's an idea of just a preferred vendor, which is like the Middletown, Rhode Island model. And they ended up with 75% of the people saying they wanted to do it. So it might be that if you just have one preferred system, it is the, granted preferred system, you audit it on a monthly basis or something, just to make sure everyone's following the rules. But then that's a preferred option that a lot of residents might not opt into. So those are kind of the three off the top of my head, but I really want to get input back from the group.
I look forward to debating those.
Yes, well, maybe you want to join and help.
How does a small municipality monitor hauler behavior? Whether you mentioned it could be private hauler or municipally hired hauler, but how does a small town government monitor that the haulers are doing what they're supposed to be doing under a system?
So I think with technology, there's different ways to monitor it. And if it's a town-wide program, that is one thing. If it is each hauler doing their own thing, I think that's where you are now, and that's what makes it more difficult to haul. You gotta almost feel like you have to follow them all the time. But yeah.
That's the first one.
I'm picturing trash day and, our household is only two people, so we don't generate a lot, but there are these 70-gallon trash cans that the lids won't close on some of my neighbors every week. And the idea, if they're just watching this casually, I have to take that trash can that won't close into 26 gallons now. But you're not necessarily saying consume less. You're saying
Manage
segregate
differently.
more.
Recycle.
And
Yeah.
I think that is an important part of this conversation, because that's where I think a lot of people just listening for the first time are gonna go, you're telling me I have to consume less. And it's about more effectively pulling out the recyclables.
Right.
And thinking differently about all
reducing
those
that
items.
trash. The food waste is a whole separate thing, but it's about utilizing really three waste streams very effectively. Food, true trash, and recyclables.
Right. Recyclables and even reusables. So a lot, when we do a waste audit, which we audit those cans, those overflowing cans, that's all that we do for this pilot. I mean, this 2-year period, we have people auditing on a regular
How's
basis.
Peggy doing?
And we don't specifically target homes, so I'm not sure, but when we sort of do go to the ones that are overflowing, because we want to understand what's in here, but you do find a lot of bizarre things, like you can tell someone washed and folded the clothes, put them in, probably thought about going to the Goodwill, never got around to it, and tossed it in the can. Like, there is a lot of that. There are working appliances, lamps, toasters, toaster ovens, things that people maybe didn't match the kitchen, maybe they got a new one, but you could have sent it to college with the neighbor kid because it still works. Like and what happens in these programs is people think differently about all that, because then they're like, oh, I wonder if I should do something else with this. So it's not just the recycling stream, it's separate, it's just thinking differently also about what you throw away or what you consider to be trash.
Then if I might, I see, this is sort of getting everything segregated as quickly as possible, rather than having it be in a big pile on a conveyor belt somewhere, right? Because that just makes good sense. But there is another step upstream from the consumer, and that is the retail, the packaging at the retail level.
Oh, right.
And I'm not talking about the Amazon boxes. I'm talking about, packaging
Complicated.
for, groceries, the complicated packaging, all of that stuff. And this strategy will only take us so far. There has to be something.
Yeah, it's definitely a two-pronged thing. So if you look at Europe and the way that they do it, they have unit-based pricing plus, they call it the polluter pays principle, which is both. It's extended producer responsibility to the producers, and it's responsibility to the consumers. They just call it polluter pays principle. So it's, if you generate anything, whether you're the consumer or the corporation, you're responsible in some way for what you're putting out there. So yes, you do need both. This does stimulate behavior change. So in all the communities that I've worked with in New England that have moved into a program like this, you have in the town, you'll have people, those restaurants make sure that to-go boxes are recyclable. I mean, they get a demand for it. They don't give you something that you can't recycle. They don't give you a phone box. They just, so there's an upstream. The resident does push upstream and make changes, help to make changes. But yeah,
I was gonna say actually something very close to that, which is I'm a participant, and what goes into the orange bag is shocking how much of it is plastic and, all the wrapping and, and so when I go to the supermarket now, I do see, is there an option for something that's not wrapped in plastic? And so I think it's
does make you
insightful.
think.
Yeah,
Right.
it's insightful to go through the process.
it also makes you think about your food scraps, and realizing how much you buy that you didn't use. Like
Yeah.
that is the biggest comment.
Well,
that I
my
get
kids are
from
happy
them.
because I now throw away the stuff in the back of the fridge.
That's what I end up doing.
They don't have to do it for me.
Finally, yeah. No, it's a behavior modification, going through that and thinking more about what you're throwing away. I think from the board standpoint, I would assume that we would be supportive of the transfer station advisory, which is, we call the solid waste disposal committee, which we're gonna be changing that.
Yeah.
And putting a new name and actually rethinking the ordinance for that committee. But I think that, them exploring some recommendations, they look at different options, they come back to Guilford and to Madison with some suggestions. Everybody's supportive of them doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add the hazardous waste component, because we're not talking about that here, but, we talked about it recently,
Yep.
that making it easy to responsibly get rid of hazardous waste is really important. And we used to do it at the transfer station, and they don't do it anymore,
I just bring my paint to Killingworth Harbor.
which they now have blacklisted you because you said that twice on camera.
Actually,
Cans,
water-based
you
paint,
can bring 5
you
cans.
can, but I think water-based paint, you can actually just pour it down or whatever, right?
Water-based paint, you can still, there's still paint donations.
Yeah.
There's schools, there's places you can donate. I think Home Depot usually will take it back. So,
But there's waste oil, there's,
Yeah.
other things that have to be, because I'm sure that there are people that will take the used engine oil,
Mhm.
put it back into the containers and throw it in the
oh,
trash.
for sure.
Um,
And that's the type of behavior that if there is an outlet for it, people are thinking, when you do this, they are starting to think differently. And, oh, okay, I'll drop it off here if I can. See, as long as it's easy.
Houseway Central in New Haven has the program where your residents can go there on Saturday mornings and afternoon from midnight to mid-October.
So they do, but you have to make an appointment.
Yeah, and you have to.
We're 25 minutes
You
away.
don't have to make an appointment.
You did the last time I checked.
No, you can, I mean, you can register online if you want, or you can, when you go there, you can just give your driver's license.
But I think Bruce's point is the ease of
Making it
access.
easy.
You know,
I mean,
if
it's a
you're
half-hour
actually
drive.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can have a satellite lecture.
It's today, yeah.
And we've just refunded that,
Yeah.
but it's expensive. But
It is.
Yeah.
once upon a time,
Yeah.
we had that at our local transfer station.
Now it's there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's an unpredictable because the cost is going, and it's highly used. So we always end up never budgeting enough money to cover it because we don't know what the use is. It's just a tough thing to manage.
Yeah, there's a balance there, so you want
Yeah.
to dispose of it properly, but there's a cost to it too.
Right.
But I don't think you're allowed to consolidate it at the transfer station. I don't think the law allows you to do that.
Anymore. That must have been before though.
Oh, it
Yeah.
could be. I just remember 20 years ago, you could go and pour your engine oil into a big tank there. And
Yeah.
The latex paper, we have to do it in there, dry it out first and then put it out. if you want it.
Yeah.
But you can just bring it to the part. If it's really worth it, close this place, they take
Yeah.
like 5 or 10 cans at a time.
So it's so I think then it sounds like we're good moving forward with
Yeah,
it
yeah,
and hear what the recommendations are.
Yeah.
I have two quick questions.
Yep.
Do I understand that the ultimate solution is probably regional? We're a small town. And to run any kind of far more complicated system like this, it just seems to be beyond the capabilities of small towns. Is a regional solution more likely to be a successful solution?
I think part of this will come forward with a few different ideas, so one of them could be regional. It, depending on how you do it, it could be easier, or it could be more difficult. I mean,
But I see.
or you
some-
can also do nothing, like it's.
Right, but I also saw that you noted there are 5 or 6 states who actually, the states mandated that you
Yeah.
had to be using pricing, which is very
Helpful.
helpful.
That's helpful, but,
Because, whereas we are a small town with a limited subscriber base, right? And we're dealing with larger companies that cross a lot of different communities. And so it's hard for us to have that, we'd have to pass an ordinance, and then we'd have to enforce it. So I would say, Al, yes, it would be much easier if this
yes,
was
if you could do
Yeah.
it regionally
Yeah, if there
or
was some-
statewide, it would be
you
for
know,
sure easier, but.
statewide, this is how it has to be, and this is how it has to be done. And then we just, the haulers have to adjust to that, but,
Well, my final question is a bit personal for me. I was really enthusiastic about this program and got to participate for maybe the first 5 or 6 months. And then I was kicked out.
Yeah, well.
And-
you were hauler stuff.
Was that a hauler issue?
Yes, it was a hauler issue.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah.
contemplated when
We
you
went
set
down
up
to
the
just
pilot.
one hauler because the one hauler was not doing what they were told. So,
they were actually,
Which
they were
which you,
actually
which you know,
separating.
which you know.
You were participating.
That's right.
Yes, yes, we're like,
We didn't want you to
That's
keep
true.
Doing it. Yeah, it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I
I
got
don't
kicked
think
out.
that's true in Madison. I think the haulers weren't sufficiently brought into the pilot so that they were participating fully and understood what was expected.
well, Schweitzer has continued to do it.
I know, but one of the reasons they kicked households out was because they didn't realize the ramifications of committing to the routes they were asked to do.
Like there was too many.
Yeah, they were Schweitzer, so they were trying to commit to serving all. We had 57 households that asked to be part of it, that were their customers. And they were trying, and it was just getting to be unreasonable for the amount of money that they were getting for it. I mean, they only gave them a little bit of money. And so that was supposed to be for one route.
So they narrowed their
Which there was-
route, and
should've
then
done
the
to
other
start,
hauler, the biggest, I think the problem we had there is they just didn't always bring it to the right spot. They only brought it, is.
I think this gets to Al's question, and
Yeah.
that's, do we need more local leadership to be successful in an area that requires this much change to behavior?
Yeah, either that or we need just one, opt-in program for those that want to, just an official program. And
We
that
can
that is
follow.
an optional way to do it. Or there's the do nothing way, but, we thought we'd take the results, take it to the group, see if there's one of 3 or 4 different options to see what's best. There's no question it's more difficult in a community like this. In Southold, basically Southold, New York, the way that it works is they have 7 different haulers. Every hauler follows the rule. When they come into the transfer station and their transfer station takes the trash, they can eyeball whether they've done it correctly or whether they haven't. In your case, you'd have to have a disposal site that's managing that for you. And the way that it would work is residents would pay as they go for the units of trash that they're throwing out. The revenue from those units would go to pay that disposal facility, or it could go directly to that facility. So they would have a vested interest in saying that this hauler's not complying, they can't come here. So I mean, there could be a little bit of oversight depending on how it's built.
I think that's a solvable problem. I mean, the fact that it exists in other communities is pretty good evidence that that's solvable. And that it's still in the private sector
Right.
is evidence. But the measurement, is the measurement a function of the bags that you purchase?
So
Or is it the bags going in the can?
I think it's the bags that you purchase, you price the bag based on the size and the average weight. So it's almost like a BTU of electricity. I'm buying a small bag with a value of X because the average weight that's gonna go in there is gonna be this. And I'm paying for what I just threw away, like a prepaid telephone.
So you.
Right,
pay
but you're not
every
getting
bag.
actually charged on what's in the trash can that week.
No,
It's the
you're.
bags that you've purchased.
Yes, right, and
And then
then
you
when,
use them
as you
up.
use them, as you go, right. Right, and then the revenue from those goes to that facility to pay the tipping fees. So it's in their best interest, one, to make sure that the weights are all correct, and also to make sure that anyone bringing in trash is only bringing them in the,
Right.
in the paid for bag. So there are some parameters you could set up to make it
I
work.
mean, I lived in a community where you have to buy a tag and they won't take it at the landfill or the local dump unless you have a bag tag. So those were like $1 each. So every trash bag was $1. And I remember my father buying the biggest giant clear trash bags you could possibly buy. He was like, so for his $1 crap. But I'm just saying that they were clear, so they would monitor it to make sure that you were putting recyclables and stuff like that.
Again,
That was another.
Peggy Lyons, check her.
Yeah, no, this is not what we're doing today. But, no, but there's lots of different things, and I know that they've spent a lot of time looking at all these different options that communities have tried. And maybe there'll be an interesting solution that they can recommend to us.
Good.
So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you. And we'll look forward to hearing the follow-up.
Great, perfect, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Thank you. Okay, so next item on the agenda is an update on the Government Point project. So I know we have, is it Mike Doherty? He's from, that's the one, okay. And so I wanted to, we had kind of tentatively blessed, so to speak, the project design. And we encountered, I guess they encountered some difficulties with that project. Because I remember the board looked at something and we were gonna take it to a public information session. But then they got some additional feedback from the state, from DEEP, that, that was complicating the design. And so they, SLR wanted to run by an accommodation to that before we go to public information session, to make sure that you guys are public hearing, to be sure that the board is comfortable with the changes they make, right? Does that capture it, John?
Yes.
And Austin? Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
a revised plan, but it keeps the same kind of intent that we discussed.
So, if, Mike, if you want to, you have a presentation to show? Jeannie showing?
Yes,
Okay.
I can't, not let me change my video to go on camera, but, oh, okay, so okay. I was prepared to share my screen, but if you're, gonna use this screen, that is fine as well. Okay, so as, you were saying, just a little bit of background. So we've been working back and forth with DEP, and as was mentioned at some of the previous meetings, one of the things we've been trying to wrestle with was the permitting timeline and trying to keep it as, straightforward and compressed as possible because they can get rather lengthy. So in previous iterations of the direct beach access, the kind of stair and terraced area, which is shown on this graphic to the upper portion of it, kind of, just west of your existing staircase. We had it further page, south, which was within the coastal jurisdiction limit, and that was triggering issues for the state in terms of how they were going to permit the project, oversee it, kind of provide comments to us. So we went back and forth on a number of things, and the original initial concept was fully in front of the seawall, and so that created the greatest impact within the coastal jurisdiction line. We then moved it a little further up and put it about half and half upland, so towards into the point behind the seawall, and the other half on the seaward side of the wall. Again, it was better. They appreciated the effort, but it was still within the coastal jurisdiction. It was still affecting some of the rocky shoreline, and so they said, if you can move it completely within the upland area, so landward of the seawall, or move it completely out of the coastal jurisdiction line, you're even better off. So if we could do it in the upland, it could be what's called a COP, or a certificate of permission permit, which is a much faster process than a full permit. And if we can get it even further and get it out of the coastal jurisdiction limits, it's actually outside of their jurisdiction, and so we wouldn't have to go through a full permit process with DEEP. We would still have some other permits to go through, but it would streamline the process. So in front of you here is that full movement of the direct stair access and the terrace seating out of the coastal jurisdiction limit and in the upland area of the point. So this,
So the original drawing, design, you see what that overlook is, the round overlook piece?
Yeah.
It was almost right next to that, right?
Right
The
in front of it.
terrace.
Right in front of it.
Well,
yeah, it was just north of that area. Yep.
Just like in that bare
So-
spot.
Yeah, so, past like that little green area, that bare spot, exactly. And now we're pushing it further north up towards really where the beach starts and where the seawall ends.
Yeah, it's at the junction point, kind of the turning point in the wall at that corner.
Yeah. So that we're now out of otherwise we would have a very extensive permitting process.
So is this kind of where the current set of steps was, the one that had like kind of washed out at one point?
This is just to the west of those steps.
You can actually see them on that drawing. You see like the little light if you go.
Oh, yeah, the little white line to the
Yeah,
right. of the
yeah,
bushes
that's,
there.
I think,
Okay.
I think that's the existing staircase, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And so just to provide a little bit more visual in terms of what we're going to be looking at here, we provided these photorealistic images just to give a little bit more information and really kind of show what exactly would be taking place. So you would still have direct stair access to one side of this area, which would allow people to pass back and forth from the point to the beach. And then the seating terraced area would be off to the side of those stairs to the kind of northeast, which would allow people to gather there and have views onto the beach and almost down both sides. Mostly you're going to be looking to the east, but you can still capture glimpses of the water itself and the rocky point just outside the seawall. So we kind of oriented it enough with a little bit of an angle so that we can still take advantage of some of those views to the Rocky Point and also the beach area itself. So we've kind of gave up the initial concept of having direct water kind of like access so that you'd be sitting on these terraces and the water would be in fairly close proximity to you, just because of the length and involvement of those permits. And so while we don't have that with the water coming directly up to the terraces, you will have a very good beach access. We've pushed the handrail so it's up against the wall on the western side of the stairs, which will actually help to protect some of that. So it's not just out in space on its own. It'll give a little bit more stability there, a little bit more wave action that's coming up to that area should help there. We think this location will also be better than the existing staircase that's jutting out seaward of the wall when it has movement of the sand from beneath it and really kind of scours out right around the stairs and at times has left it completely bare of sand underneath that structure.
So I understand the stairs 100%. Given the relocation of the seating,
Yeah.
I'm wondering why have it at all?
Yeah.
Right, like what's the?
I would rather,
point.
and if there's money to be saved by taking it out, I'd rather see that decked seating area enhanced
Right.
with that money. I'm not sure that sitting to look down at the sand is.
Well, you're actually
Not to
sitting,
mention
no,
it's hot.
you're kind of looking,
It's cement.
would you have a better view of the seating part of that? Do you have another perspective? Yeah, there we go. So I actually think you're still able to sit and watch kids, people out on the rocks, you know.
I get Bruce's point though, to, what is the line item amount for this particular portion of the project, and can it be utilized in a different area of the project for better enhancement? I mean, Scott said it too, it's like, are people really gonna be sitting on the cement? Is it gonna be too hot?
No, we don't find, I mean, so the idea would be to use a colorized concrete. So, or you could even just a light gray standard concrete, doesn't necessarily get, that hot that you couldn't sit on it. You could also do other things such as wood slatting on certain portions of it. There's other variations. We didn't go super far with the design of it just because, we wanted the reaction of the board. And if it is something that, you would rather see changed or not included at all. So we didn't take it, too far, but we do precast concrete amphitheaters with the kind of customized radii and different things such as this that are in a lighter color concrete, not quite a white, but a cream or a beige that we've used pretty regularly. And we don't find that people find it too hot to sit on. And so this is kind of a mini amphitheater, almost small outdoor classroom style seating that I think you would still find people would want to sit and utilize it, even though the water is not directly at the edge of it as was originally entailed. I mean, I think even the stairs, we gave a bit of a flair to them. We figure, and when we typically find people will actually still sit on the stairs themselves when there's ample room, so people can pass back and forth, and there still could be someone taking a break or just hanging out around the stair area itself.
I was skeptical when you were showing the other angle, but this angle actually I don't like for some reason. I don't know why.
I'm still not a fan.
Yeah,
I'm still not a fan. I mean, maybe a bigger staircase. I just don't see it as a natural gathering place where it was originally located. I got it. I thought that would be just beautiful. You're going to be sitting at the amphitheater is sort of facing the stairs, so you're going to be watching people go up and down the stairs.
I still think you're facing the ocean.
Yeah, you're facing out
You're facing
towards
out.
the beach.
Well, I don't know. Those three people sitting on the thing are looking right at the stairs because of the way it's in a corner. It's in a corner. So
Yeah.
my personal view is I don't think it adds to it. I don't think it's a natural gathering
Yeah.
place, but.
So you'd just rather
that's
see
just
no
me.
seating at all? Is there a structural reason that you need that seating area?
No.
Is there a significant cost attached to that seating area? Or what?
So the original cost estimate had a line item of $125,000 in total. And we've not tried to pre-estimate this. I would say it's going to be most likely in that same range.
Um,
Yeah,
So
like
I would-
a mother who can't really wander around on the
Yeah.
beach and someplace just
they
go
could
sit.
sit there
not
and
up
watch
on
their
it.
kid. That's what I saw it as. It's more like, when my kids were running around all the time, I could never see them when I was up at Garvin Point, but I didn't want to sit in the sand, so this is kind of like a nice spot. You could, that's
Put
how
a
I
stroller
view this.
there, but-
Yeah, you know, and you can kind of look at both areas now. You can look on the beach, you can actually look at the playground, and you can see the picnic areas, but
Would school groups use them for teaching?
You could.
Pardon? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it could be good for, and I know they do take kids down for what, that horseshoe crab thing, and they do different things down there.
Oh, that's over in Canaan, yeah.
Oh no, they do something at surf club.
High school's got a science class.
So I know, like, Lawson, you had some comments too.
Yeah, if I may,
Yeah.
so definitely, we have multiple environmental classes that we have at the surf club every year. That would be a perfect spot, for that class to gather, instead of making their way back up onto the deck at the surf club proper. The stairs itself, I think, is a better design than the original proposed one. That always made me a little nervous when it was in the water. So a lot of slippery,
Yeah.
rocks, and we're, sort of asking people to walk down steps like that. This alleviates that issue as well. I think that where the scallop seat is would be, VIP fireworks seating,
We could try
to-
to.
That's like the press box.
Say, Austin, are you at all concerned about somebody sliding off that seat? I'm looking at the young lady pictured right on the edge on the top there.
Oh, like there's no railing
Yeah.
on the right-hand side of it or barrier?
Well, I think if you're gonna use the stairs, you would stay to the, I guess that's the west side. The more railings you put up, the more blocking of the view you're gonna have. So I think that's what Mike is talking about there. That's why they pressed it so far up against the seawall itself, is to eliminate any blockage of the view.
Well, a lot of people just sit on the wall, right? You know, a lot of people just plop down on that wall anyway.
Yep.
Very,
Um,
yeah, it's very common.
Yeah,
I think this actually adds a nice element
Yeah.
where people can come and sit.
It's easier for seniors.
I was gonna ask, is there,
And I'm betting money Bruce is gonna sit there.
What I think would be, my preference would be to see that observation area, that decked area expanded with any money that would be saved by this, but that's,
I mean, what we could do, this, we can have all this
Woody area.
itemized in the budget, right? And then this is gonna go to the public as well for comments. And it may be that, depending on the budget, we might have to cut some things anyway, so you might get your way. But so what if we make sure that if they can somehow, when you put the pricing together, to have that specific thing as a separate line item?
and then can I
Sure.
ask, because if we're thinking about this being potentially a good area for students to use for educational program, is there any accessibility issues for students that might be in wheelchairs or seniors that might be using walkers, that sort of thing?
There's 88.
Yeah, like ADA compliance.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah, so at this point, there is no accessible route down to the beach in this area of the point. So
Or access even the bench style seating.
you can get to the top bench from the grass side and get onto the bench. You'd be able to transition onto that top bench from the lawn side. Yeah.
Oh, so you could like sit. Right.
So back out to 50,000 feet, the strategy to pull this all back and get it out of the domain of deep, I think is a good one and one that we should be pursuing. I think that's the right way to go.
Actually,
Yeah.
safe too for the
Yeah.
public. I really do. I think I was with Austin on just being a little nervous about the slippery rocks and,
Well, that was underwater last week.
this
Let's
one
say,
too.
let's face it.
Yeah, it was
Top
close.
step wasn't underwater, but the bottom step was.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will be a problem at one point at the bottom level, but not as, the other one was cascading into the water tide. It was gonna be definitely, which we loved, because you could
Always.
sit there and have the water coming at you, but
Yeah.
the slippery piece, that's I think a very good observation. Okay, so we'll make sure that we get pricing, blocking out everything, but we could take this design to the public information session.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see what they say. All right, great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we just have one last item on the communication facilities, and this is to update you on some of the issues going on with our, thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Okay, Bill
See you
on
guys.
the-
Bye.
oh,
Okay.
I did, is Dean on that committee? Or
No.
Okay, all right, so, I guess, I don't know, Sam is here, was Chief Drum gonna join this as well, or?
I'm not sure.
I wonder if he didn't.
I can't start my video, but it's all right.
Okay, you know what, I think that might be a setting on the meeting. Maybe anybody be.
So I know it's been a long night. I'll make this quick.
Okay, yeah.
So I put a couple slides together that basically show where all our cell towers are. The first is a list. That's off the assessor's list. We have like 6 of them in town. The next slide actually has the locations of them. I know it's kind of busy, but so the circles are a 1 mile radius and a 4 mile radius. And that's because the 5G has a range of 1 to 3 miles and the 4G has a range of 2 to 4 miles. And it all depends on topography. You see that red dot up towards about the middle of the town, north and south? That's where Ryerson is. So you can see a lot of the lines intersect at that point, and that's probably why there's no signal up there.
Me too.
And then, so depending on, so you would think that along the beach, we'd have plenty of coverage, but there must be, I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if it's just 5G that we're pushing down there. But the next slide has a kind of depicts what's going on the shoreline, and that's a 1 mile radius, and you can see where the gaps are on a 1 mile radius. And it's pretty much in the areas where we're having problems.
Right.
So we did meet with Chief Drum, and I met with the representative from American Tower last week, and we went around to a few sites for the viability of building some towers. One was at the Public Works Garage. One was down at the upper parking lot at the exchange field. And both of those they said were very easy to build. It'd be very little impact. The one at the beach, they said they would do a tree. They're a little bit more expensive. They'd rather not do it, but if that's what the community wants, they would entertain putting a tree type tower up so it would blend in better. And we also visited Ryerson School, and the guy got very nervous. He goes, "We shy away from school areas." I said, "Well, this school is going to be decommissioned within the next couple of years," so that he was kind of more comfortable with it. Then we went all the way up to Rockland Preserve, which is a little bit more complex to put a tower up there, but he was gonna take all the sites back to their salespeople and get a feeling on, from the carriers, if there's a need, and then they might reach back out to us. The one at the Public Works would be in lieu of the tower that's at 8 Old Route 79 right now. Because they're having trouble with the landlord setting up a lease arrangement. And so they'd rather keep that tower there, but in case everything falls apart, there's another spot to build the tower.
Just so the board, I know we talked a little bit about how we're going to talk to the owner of that tower and of the land, and to have some sort of revenue. But it got very negotiation. And then American Tower, who is the one that owns that tower there now, is contemplating moving to a different location. So that's what kind of had us start having the conversation. Well, we'll see this town has, and that it can serve multiple purposes. And so that's when we came around and looked at this.
In my yard, if it means I get a cell signal.
Fix that whole gap.
Yeah. So at all the spots, they were amenable to putting our public safety radio equipment up at the top, which would actually enhance our system as well, because we do have a few dead spots. Mostly up above in the county road area, but there is one spot where the Parkview Business Center is over there at 1291. The radio signal on all the frequencies just doesn't penetrate that building. It's very scratchy, even on the outside. So some of these places would enhance the radio system as well. So what we were thinking of doing is put an RFP out after July 1, have a consultant do a study for both, the cell tower and our emergency radio equipment to do, like a feasibility where the best locations would be and where we would spend our best dollars.
And that would be, we wanted to use the communications fund in CIP for that, correct?
Yes.
Pay for the consultant. So,
Yeah.
Just doing, and this was a strategic plan objective, right? Was to improve public infrastructure, communications. So I think it'd be worth doing it, having somebody really look at, where the problems are. And then would be the best served. There might be two of them. I know that the exchange field would create a big improvement, but that's now putting it on. Want to have a tower there.
I thought the light poles were built.
So we've talked about this, but I think that the company, was it Verizon looked at this? I know the chief is not here, and I just think they felt it wasn't gonna do enough. You know what I mean? Like they do it for, yeah, basically for them. They're not gonna get, why do it? It's only extending, but it's not gonna be the same as actually
So
putting
we'll
up.
all switch to AT&T.
Yeah, I know. Sam, when you went around with them, did you talk about that, the whole light pole thing at the Strong Field?
So that didn't come up because the guy that came out was just a tower company guy.
Okay.
What we really need to do is get the carriers out and see if they would put their equipment on it.
Well, I thought Jack had done that with them, but it was unclear to me kind of what the conclusion was, that it was, they didn't seem interested, is what he seemed to intimate, but.
Well, I don't think it was the cost benefit was on their side. I don't think they were going to get enough boost out of their area for the cost of adding all the equipment.
Right, okay. So I think the idea here is if we could get the study, I mean, right now you would be looking at using CIP funds. I might try to find a source so we can do this rather than waiting till July, right? Or I guess by the time we get the RFP together and for July 1 start, maybe?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's any money in Scrog. I forgot to bring that up today. We were talking about it.
I asked that too. So we'll come back with a timeline and up on this. But because it looks like the whole tower arrangement that we talked about, which wouldn't have solved any of these other problems. It just would have meant we would have secured the tower that had our communication stuff on it, our safety stuff on it. So, okay, so that was kind of.
Yeah, and in 2025, we're gonna lose all the revenue that we're getting now off that tower at 879.
Which is why doing something at, the Public Works garage or whatever is attractive.
I'm just thinking too, Ron Clark, this was his job, was cell phone towers and whatnot. And he's got a lot of different companies and everything.
Well, I follow the song, but I haven't seen the song.
Entered into the conversation at all.
And then, right, so that's what I used to say.
So he knows it while thinking. So, but we have talked to him.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so I think then the last item on the agenda is, you're hanging in here. Right, okay, but this is just a quick, business item. Item number 13 is also take action to approve calling a public hearing on Tuesday, February 27th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the auditorium, Polson Middle School, 302 Green Hill Road, for the purpose of a budget presentation by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, conducted by the Board of Finance in accordance with the town charter.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's just a business item, so we get that formally scheduled and we'll get the notice in the paper. And any citizens' comments? Do we have anybody left?
There are 2 people left and their hands are not raised.
Motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
Great, with that, hearing no objection.